0 to 60 can define a performance car, but it's the fastest 60 to 0 that's the aim of Tarok's brakes. From road cars to race cars, circuits, special stages, or the autostrada, nothing reduces speed like Tarok's brakes. Italy gave the world the art of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Tarok's has given drivers the art of stopping. For more information and to acquire your own masterpiece, visit taroks.co.uk. It's me, Mark Stone, and this is the Backseat Driver Podcast. Sat in the, shall we say, the delights of rural Cheshire with what you might call motor racing royalty.
I agree.
It would have been nice, as I'm sure Christianne would have agreed, to have had her father, Innes Ireland, sat here instead of her. But I think we can safely say you're the embodiment of your late father. From what I can get, from what people have told me,
oh God,
you are your dad. But I would like to welcome to the Backseat Driver Radio Show, Christianne Ireland. Christianne, welcome to the Backseat Driver Radio Show.
Good evening, Mark. It's absolutely delightful to meet you, I have to say, at last. Seeing you on videos and sort of over the phone is not the same, and immediately I feel comfortable and welcome. And it's like that thing, kindred spirit. It's either there or it's not. So it's lovely to meet you, and thank you for arranging this and, making it happen. Fantastic.
Now, the great interesting thing is for the listeners, your dad came from Mytholmroyd in Yorkshire, so there is the great Yorkshire connection.
Absolutely, and it's something, I can't pronounce that one.
What, Mytholmroyd?
Yeah, no, forget it. I know what it looks like on the paper, but I cannot pronounce it. And yes, it's really strange, because of course he always was so proud at saying, of course I'm a Scotsman. He was born in Yorkshire, we lived in Wales, and we have Ireland as a surname.
Yeah.
How cockeyed and kooky is that? But Yorkshire, of course, we got many ties with Yorkshire. Not only my father, my mother, so his first wife, came from Scarborough.
Right.
And my grandfather, who was the original kind of James Herriot veterinary surgeon, but he specialised in horses. He had a practice in Yorkshire. So both my uncle and my father went to school. Their first prep schools were in Yorkshire as well.
Now, the one thing about your father, Innes, besides being a racing driver, he was a paratrooper.
Yes.
He was a trawler captain.
Yes, he was.
He was president of the British Racing Drivers Club.
Yep.
And he was described by Sterling Moss, who, if you don't mind me saying, was also your godfather, but he was described as his generation, Sterling Moss's generation's equivalent to James Hunt. Oh. He was... Innes Ireland was basically what racing drivers were and what racing drivers should be instead of these sterile cutouts that are forced in front of us now.
I can completely agree with absolutely everything that you said. When you said that, about what Sterling said about Dad being the sort of James Hunt of their era, he was absolutely spot on. My father was naughty. He was irresponsible. He was all of the things that you would not want to take home to meet your parents. But strangely enough, he probably was the most honest man you'd ever meet, because he would say to people when they said, when they put their hands up in horror and thought, oh God, there he is again. And what's he up to now? And who's that with him? He would be the first one to admit, well, it's how I live. It's how I choose to live. And he accepted all of the responsibility that went with it, as far as I know. I miss that kind of driver. And I was privileged enough to have a friendship with Mr. Hunt. And it was my father's fault. He introduced us. And
were they all right?
Well, there are certain things I
won't go into all the stories that you and I know about James Hunt.
We'll leave some of the detail out. No, yes, in a way, because they had that same honourable personality. And I think that's what made them special. Yes, they were naughty. Yes, they were playboys. Yes, my God, my father could drink everybody under the table and then still get up on the table and dance without any pants on underneath his kilt.
Then climb in a Formula One car
Absolutely,
and go and win
the
something.
next day. Well, yeah. Or climb a tower. And James did have the same personality, and they were thoroughly honourable in many respects, and they were loyal as the day is long. So their handshake meant something. And I think I started losing interest in motor racing in Formula One, I guess in the 80s. Probably. I was doing other things. I was probably getting pissed like my dad as well. There was that
Can
as
I
well.
point out?
My
This is another 11 o'clock Sunday morning show.
is it?
Yes.
Oh. Do I have to? Yeah.
No, you're all right. Carry on.
You can edit those things out, can't you?
Well, I don't. They just run.
And I kind of feel that I lost some of what I'd grown up with because it wasn't there anymore. It was becoming more clinical. The personalities were still there, but it was a little bit harder to find them. And actually, they had so many sponsors, it was untrue. In my dad's day, they had, I think, they had Esso or BP or Shell. They might have had Dunlop, and then, of course, Les Leston.
I was going to say there'd be the Dunlop overalls as such.
Absolutely.
And the Les Leston helmets. And
the underwear.
Yeah.
The flame-proof underwear.
Yeah. And then maybe Bell. If you were getting modern, you'd have a Bell helmet.
He ended up with a Bell helmet, but his original ones came from, I can't remember the name, Oak something. And they were handmade.
Yeah.
And so was Graham's, Fanjo's, Sterling's, that sort of era, Pedro's.
Yeah.
And then obviously Bell sort of came on the scene, and my dad's last helmets were obviously Bell. So yeah. Yes, the drivers today. Talented, I can't deny. And I don't know how anyone can say you can compare the drivers today to those days. And it's not because anybody was better.
No.
It was, and everybody says, but you're going to say it's because it was different. It was different. In my dad's day, and this is something that, I feel the difference between the cars are obviously insurmountable. But in my dad's day, for him or any of his teammates to actually get a Lotus on the grid was one of the greatest achievements, let alone get it round the track and home safely. That was the difference, and you had to have a different breed of person. And I think nowadays it's modern technology.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
But I mean, you told the tale, and I'll let you tell that your dad started his apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce in Glasgow and blew it up.
Well, he didn't blow the whole factory up, I don't think. I think he spectacularly tried. I'm not entirely sure what he was trying to do, but he started off in the aeronautical section in Glasgow as an apprentice, and he'd been stripping down Merlin engines. Because one of the things I found sort of many years ago was his handwritten notes of stripping down that Merlin engine and putting it all back together. So he did handwritten notes. So that was taken from the time when he was up there. And I presume he loved flying anyway, so maybe that was the route he was going to take. But obviously he thought he would be clever, and there was an experiment which went horribly wrong. And then on the back of that, Rolls thought, no, we can't afford to have this guy in here. So they thought, what the hell do we do with him? Because actually he's talented. He knows his stuff. He's intuitive. And I think that was the thing with my father's driving. With everything he did, he was intuitive. He was a man of feeling, understanding, without necessarily having that instruction manual. So they thought, we've got to put him somewhere. And the automatic place was to send him down to Rolls-Royce in London, where he lived on a motor torpedo boat in Chelsea Wharf, and then went to work every day in a Bentley. Much to the horror of Rolls-Royce. I think they turned a blind eye as they suddenly realised, actually, he might have something here, and he was probably quite a good chap to have on board.
So when did he start racing?
He actually started early 50s, and that was club racing. Obviously,
not being funny. Races of that age old did. You look at Clark, you look at Stewart,
Yes.
you look at. They all started club
racing.
And as a rule, in somebody else's car that would say, "Well, go on, you have a go," and the owner of the car would discover that the guy they'd let have a go in it was faster
actually
than
quite
they were.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, you'll drive it, I'll run it.
And then that's when they got the breaks. It's like Jimmy Clark getting his leg up with Ian Scott Watson.
Yeah.
But my father was I think he was lucky enough where they lived in the Borders. There were two very elderly spinster sisters living, and my father befriended them, or one of them, because in the garage there were two Bentleys.
Yeah.
My dad's one, he was eventually left, was a 1928 3-litre Bentley, and there was another 4-litre?
Well, they're 4.5s.
It might have been
4.5. I mean, there were all sorts of engine sizes.
Yeah, and that was...
Because the other trick was they used to take a 3-litre chassis and put a 4.5-litre in it, so lots of Bentleys got lots of engines.
Yeah, that's right. And Dad's was certainly a 3-litre. Anyway, he befriended the chauffeur as well, and every day he'd be up there cleaning it. He eventually got to drive it. When the two old ladies died, they left my father and my uncle the Bentleys.
Yeah.
And so the 3-litre Bentley was the one my father started his racing career in.
Yeah.
And I think he also persuaded his father to buy him an old Riley. And he did have a Riley at one stage before the Lotuses came on board.
So, where did it go from there? I mean, did he then go... I mean, his military service, because
Yes.
he was a paratrooper.
He was. Well, that was also under a drunken stupor. he was in the... he obviously did his national service.
As he was about to leap out, I didn't sign up for this.
No, and it was a bit like that. He was in the King's Own Scottish Borderers.
Yeah.
And I think after a very good one of their annual dues or something, and they were due to sign up to where they were then going to go on for their next stage, he'd signed up for the paratroopers. He thought it would be a jolly good laugh.
Yeah.
And when he realised what he'd done, he thought, Christ, I've got to jump out of a plane.
Hey.
But he did it, and he went to Egypt. He served out there for 2 years. But he was still doing some club racing, because of course he had the Bentley when he was doing his national service, and when he was, I think he was in barracks up in the Borders somewhere, and there was a race that he had entered, and he thought, I've got to go and do this. So he escaped from barracks to go and do the race, because he thought no one will ever know.
Yeah.
But he won the race, which was he didn't think he was going to
and
made the newspapers, and then his commanding officer hauled him in the next day. He managed to get off with no problem by saying that he would give the commanding officer a ride in the Bentley.
Right.
So that was fine.
So how did it progress from there?
He was then, I think he asked his brother, who had a very wealthy friend, because he realised at that stage that the Bentley wasn't going to take him to the next level.
Well, I mean, even then it would be an old car.
It was, absolutely. And I think it was limited. He enjoyed it. He did Charter Hall, those kind of places. But it wasn't going to take him anywhere further, and he knew that he wanted to do more. It was there.
Yeah.
He'd watched other people. I think he had Full Throttle, that book, and I think he was inspired by the stories, the tales. He also, one of his heroes was Mike Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Of course. So he thought, well, actually, maybe I could do that, but I need a car. He didn't have any money, but my uncle, one of his best friends, and he was also an army serving officer, he was a Major Robinson, I think his name was, loaned him the money to buy his first Lotus 11.
Yeah.
And that's where it all started. He then had got married, and they moved to Elstead in Surrey, near Godalming. And he sort of had a couple of garages there and set up servicing Bentleys and Rolls Royces, as you do, and then, having the little racing team.
Yeah.
He also looked after other people's race cars, but he had one of his own, which was sponsored by, Major Robinson. So that's sort of where it started. From there, he did go and race that car at Reims
Right.
in, I think it was 1958. And at Reims, he was in a race against Ferraris, and he won both of those races in a little Lotus 11. And apparently, the story goes that when Enzo found out that both of his Ferrari teams had been beaten, he was shouting down the phone, "Beaten by what? And by whom?" And apparently, and from then it was Enzo that spotted him really and sort of thought, actually, this guy might have something going for him.
Yeah.
And I think other people had then, obviously Chapman was around at the time, and that's where he was given his first drive.
Yeah.
And of course, Alan Stacey was his teammate at the time. Jimmy wasn't around at that stage.
Now, in this era, I mean, like one of the most famous for doing all the different, shall we say, disciplines was Stirling Moss.
Yes.
But they drive a single-seater in the morning, they drive a sports car in the afternoon. Around tea time, they'd drive a big saloon car, a big Jaguar. I mean, I conclude your dad went through all this.
Yes, he did.
They'd race over the weekend,
Yes.
but they'd race about 7 or 8 cars. Because there's a famous story of Stirling Moss having the radio on in a Ferrari, tuned into the commentary, so he could work out where everybody was in relation to him.
And I think that's exactly what it was like. I mean, obviously I was tiny. I mean, I was born in 58, so obviously.
So you went to the meetings.
Yes, but I did in my pram. and obviously during that period, I mean, I was Dad's mechanic at the time. In those early days, was somebody called Britt Pierce, who was Mike Hawthorne's old mechanic, who after Mike, tragically got killed, Dad took Britt on, and Britt used to look after me, so I was always known as Snuffy. And I remember when I got married, Britt was at my wedding, and he said, "Oh, it's lovely to see you, Snuffy." I said, "Right, I've got a bone to pick with you, mate. Why do you call me Snuffy?" And he said, "Because I looked after you as a baby from about 18 months onwards, when your dad used to turn up in the E-Type. He'd get the Silver Cross pram out of the back of the E-Type, put it all up, shove you in it and say, 'There you are, Britt.' And apparently I used to always have a snuffly cold.
Oh, right.
So that's why I was known as Snuffy. But yes, I used to go around in the early days to some of the races, not all of them, obviously, because, when he started to earn a little bit of money, by 1960, he'd bought, the big house, the big country gentleman's house with the airstrip out the back. And
What you do.
and hot and cold running staff, including a nanny that looked after me. But yes, I mean, obviously I don't remember those early days and so much of who he was doing what in. I do know that in 61, 62, I remember pulling off when I was just finding out a bit more about, what kind of cars he had driven. And I was absolutely staggered at the amount of races he got in 1 year. I mean, it was sort of almost every day, every week, sometimes two in a day, as you say. And in those days, he had an aeroplane, so he could fly from one track to another. And, can you imagine getting it out of your GTO Ferrari and then getting into a little Formula One car? And it was like that. You think of what they had to adapt.
Well, they were jobbing drivers.
Yeah, they were. It's like the jocks today, the jockeys, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. It's the same
They
principle.
earn appearance money. They earn start money.
That's right, start money.
If they got a fastest lap in, they'd earn a few quid. If they won, we were quids in here.
And I think a lot of the time for Dad, it was the start money.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was bottles of whiskey, so that was even better. But yeah, and I just think that's what he loved. That's really what he loved. And he loved the passion that went with it. He was passionate about his cars. He understood. I've never witnessed somebody understand a car in the way that I witnessed him whenever I was a passenger.
Yeah.
He very rarely let me drive him anywhere, to be fair. But I witnessed the difference between us and them.
Yeah.
And it was very, very, very evident. And it's that feel, it's instinctive. And I have inherited some of that, I think. But no, it was a hard taskmaster as well. Because the other thing is, they often didn't know, they might have 2 drives in one day and they might have a full week, and he'd leave home on the Sunday night, pack up the aeroplane or whatever it was, even if he was going in one of the cars. And he would hang his dressing gown up. And I always remember him saying to me, because I asked him once, why the hell do you never wear a dressing gown? You don't wear anything when you go around stark naked. Why do you hang your dressing gown up? And he said, that's because I never know whether I'm going to see it again.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of thing. So he would go off on the Sunday night, say goodbye to, me and my mother and the nanny or whatever else was wandering around the enormous house. And we never knew if we were going to see him again, because that was Dad's job. And it was a bizarre way to grow up, really.
But the other interesting thing is, before I conduct any interview, I try and get a little bit of background. I looked at the background of your dad and gave up making notes because the laptop will scroll and scroll and scroll. Yeah. Both the races, the cars. He raced at Monaco. He was injured at Monaco. Yeah. But there was a single seat.
Oh, that was with the queer box.
What was that? Go on.
Where at Monaco, when he went into the tunnel, and Lotus, it was called the queer box, and basically it was the wrong way round box.
Oh, right.
And they didn't, they'd only told him, they'd only put in that day, I think, or the day before.
By the way, it works backwards.
And anyway, so he went in what he thought was going into second, it went into reverse. So he came out of the tunnel at 100 miles an hour, and the car followed him, and he was skidding out. But yes, you're right. Even I today, I can Google, and I look at some of the magazine articles. I look at some of the forums, going back to the early 2000s and things. There were some amazing forums, and listening to what people perceived he was. And I would read some of these things, and I pick up snippets about my old man that I never knew about. And it's fascinating. And there are so many stories out there. Obviously, I lived a lot of them, and I was there for all of his racing career. I survived that period, so did he. And then I suppose I still lived in his house until I got married in the late 70s. But even then we were still, in great touch all the time. Yeah. Of course we were. And even then the stories were coming out, and I'd sit there in amazement, because he was a great raconteur.
You didn't go up to him and say, is that true? Did you actually do that?
Yes, but the trouble is...
He probably did.
Yes. And that was the frightening thing, because I always remember growing up, and it wasn't so much about his career. That's the interesting thing about my father. He did have a career, and a great career. And, he did have some podiums, and he did win Team Lotus, their very first Grand Prix. But it's the stories, it's the reputation that's out there about what he was. So I learned things, not so much now. I think I've pretty much got the full ticket now. Some of them we won't go into.
If anybody's listening that knows something,
I was going to say,
let you know.
Please let me know. You can get my email address from Mark. I kind of feel there's still more out there, because a lot of people, he touched a lot of people's lives whilst he was motor racing, but also afterwards, and especially in his last few years when he was the president of the BRDC. And I know Facebook is the most amazing platform for building a network. And I was in touch with Justin Gurney, and I sort of didn't know some of the stories from the later years when he was BRDC president, and actually when he was ill as well. And so there are people out there that do have some wonderful stories that actually I don't know yet. And so those are the things that are going to be interesting over the next year or so, because we are trying to find out some of these stories for a little project in the background that's hush hush. He was a great man. And I feel very privileged to have known him not only as a father but as a man, because he wasn't. Not only was he a racing driver, he had many other talents, as you mentioned earlier. But one of the stories that I grew up with thinking, no, it is not true, was the time when it was in America.
Because he drove NASCAR, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yep. And actually, that was one of his last races, or Daytona was one of his last. Yeah. So that was NASCAR, wasn't it? 67. And he hated it, I think.
Oh.
Yes, no, he didn't. It wasn't something he really wanted to do, but I think it was sort of something he felt he ought to do.
Yeah.
He loved Sebring. And he drove there in the early 60s with Steve McQueen. They were mates.
Yeah.
You can imagine those two together. And there are some wonderful stories in his book about him and Steve. But I always grew up with the story thinking can't be true, was about when he said he drove Hertz at the time, the car rental people, had this wonderful advert saying, leave your car anywhere and we'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Now, Dad was staying, and I don't know what racing it was. It could have been Sebring or somewhere like that. He was staying in a very glitzy hotel. The Beatles were there in the same hotel. And there was a wonderful big swimming pool. And he had a Hertz hire car. I think they had a very wonderful evening. Good food, good wine. And I think before they all went off to bed, they thought it would be a really good idea. I think Dad said, should we just see whether they'll honour what they keep saying on their adverts, and should we just pop it in the swimming pool? So the car was driven into the swimming pool. Hertz leapt on it.
Yeah.
They thought, this is the best advertising campaign, because they then did a whole filming thing about winching this car out of the thing whilst Dad had done a bunk, not paying the bill or anything. But they didn't need to, because it was the best advertising that they could have ever had.
But to just go back a little bit, I can remember you telling me, and it's a bit of a known thing, there's images of your dad with the Ford GT40 on the trailer, hooked to the back of the Aston Martin, driving it down to Le Mans.
Yes.
There's you going out with your mum shopping in a Ferrari 250 GTO.
Yep.
I mean, these cars now are worth millions. They are serious. I mean, what was it? Back then, they were just cars. And in many ways, they didn't have the value then that they have now. But what was it like growing up with these cars? I mean, these cars, even then, won world championships. They were cars that people would pay a lot of money to get behind the wheel of. And you and your mum went shopping in one.
Yeah, but you see at the time, I mean, OK, the GTO, that was the one that was built for Sterling.
Yeah.
That obviously Sterling had his accident.
Is that the one just putting in that's on the video on social media where your dad's driving it at Goodwood?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
He won the TT in it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And it was the UDT Laystall colours.
Yeah.
So that funny green. I don't know if you strange green. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I love it.
Yeah.
And it had the tartan strip on the front as well. That was the one. And Dad went and he was given the drive on that after Sterling had his terrible accident. That was lived at home for a while. And it was, my mother was put on the insurance and we used to go shopping in it. So she'd wedge me in the front. And there was a guy who lived in New Radnor, which is our little village. And he used to say on a Saturday morning, you could almost, set your watch to Mrs. Ireland coming shopping with a little basket in the GTO, going down the high street with me with my feet wedged on the dashboard and the chocolate Labrador in the footwell.
And you knew when you got to the zebra crossing, she'd select third because it was basically doing the right speed to go to the
And so, it was amazing. And the other thing was the DB4 GT that he used to tow the GT40 on, and that was John Whitmore's GT40. And there's lovely stories because when he used to go down to Le Mans with it, he'd be towing it because, of course, that was the jobbing driver in him. Yeah. That was part of the experience. It wasn't
that's
about...
how cars were taken to circuits.
Of course it was.
Maybe they were flown somewhere occasionally, but most of the time they were trailered or even driven.
Yeah.
I mean, the car would be driven to the circuit, raced, and provided they hadn't pranged it, drive it back.
And, he loved those trips to Le Mans with the DB4 because he loved the DB4, absolutely adored it. And then hauling the GT40 on the back, and of course there was a little stop-off point that the journos knew. So Dennis Jenks would always know if he saw a GT40 going along the hedge line, that was Innis, and that in 5 minutes there'd be a drink on the table waiting for him, because they all used to meet at this place. And that's what it was like, you know. But growing up with those cars, to be fair, in my later years, when I sort of went to school in Scotland, I was 11, 12, 13. Of course, my dad he always used to arrive late to pick me up, because he'd always then think, what's the most exotic car I can come and pick Christianne up from school? And I used to cringe, because the girls, all of they weren't really friends. They were sort of, you know, the school would be all at the window. What's Mr. Ireland going to come in today? I mean, it was a boarding school, so this wasn't very often this occurrence would happen. But they'd all be waiting, and a GT40 or an Aston Martin, the latest Aston Martin, because of course he was still doing test driving for them, would turn up, and all the girls would be swooning. And the headmistress, which was even more creepy, would be rushing out to give him a hug and a kiss, and I think, oh no. And you know, in those days, I had no concept of those cars. I loved them, of course I did, and I had no concept of their value, or really that they were really that special, except that everyone swooned over them. And they sounded good. I loved the sound, I loved the feel of them. But you know, there were so many times I stood at that window and I thought, I wish he would turn up in a Morris Minor and be like everybody else. But hey ho, looking back, oh my God, they lived in the garage. They were part of what I knew.
It was the car, you opened the garage doors and they were sat there.
Yes, and I did used to go to school in a GT40. We had one for a while, a road one. And the GTO, I don't remember. I was quite small. The E-Type I do. And then, of course, reams and reams of Aston Martins. Which I loved, and I inherited my father's love of them just because they were so sexy. And they were, I don't know, they were quite manly cars as well. They weren't girly cars, you know, you actually had to drive
Well,
them.
the other thing by then, the James Bond films would be out with Connery driving.
Oh no, and we had that DB5 I've got a picture in front of our rather nice Georgian mansion, and the James Bond, I'm sitting on my pony. As you do, looking very grumpy because I think I'd been told I had to sit on the pony and do something, and then there was the James Bond car in the background.
So the actual car was there. Do you know
Dad had it for a while.
Do you know they've just brought out a replica one? It's about 2.7 million and it's not road legal.
That's
you think
crazy.
What a waste of time. And it's got plastic machine guns. You think what a
that's not fair.
No.
God, talking about plastic machine guns, my father did. He did try and buy a tank.
Oh, right.
And I do remember us all thinking, no, Dad, you've really lost the plot here. You know, what are you going to do with it?
I'm going
to shoot everybody. It was during that time where I think he desperately wanted to be a recluse and get away from everybody. But no, the thought of him having a tank. God, no, that would have been a bit much.
I mean, just out of interest, how did he become a trawler captain?
Yes. After he retired, he then was sports editor of Autocar. And we lived in London. And that's because the stepmother number one was a Londoner. And she wanted not to live in Wales and have the big lovely house and everything. So, you know, and she wanted to move back to London. And I think for that period, Dad hated London. He's slightly reclusive, you know, he likes his own space. And I think it was his way of getting back to say, right, we're moving up. He bought a plot of land by the sea, Kirkcudbright, which is where they used to have, whilst he never lived there permanently, he used to have holidays up there with his family. And he just absolutely adored it. And he said, I want to go back to Scotland. I want to now enjoy a life where there's nobody who knows me. There's nobody going to come banging on the door, and I can just go fishing. So he had this idea. We bought
Most people buy a rod and reel. They don't.
No,
get
he
a
did
troll.
that. No, but he had all of that, and he never caught a salmon.
Yeah.
But he'd go every year religiously to try and catch a salmon. He never caught one, so he decided, well, if you can't catch a salmon, I better go and buy a fishing boat.
Yeah.
So he went over to Stavanger in Norway, where we bought a yacht, which was lovely, and he bought that back. And then he went back again, I don't know whether it was the same year, and he bought his first fishing boat.
Yeah.
And it was a 45-foot fishing boat, and he was going to do lobsters. So, yeah, that was fine. And in a way, he loved it. I think he got out of his system all of the hurt, all of the stuff that he walked away from when he walked away from motor racing. I think it was his mental health moment, but I think it cost him a lot more angst and actually cost him everything, because he then decided not having one fishing boat was enough. So he then bought a small fishing boat. I think he had that sort of built, which was it was called the Eddie G. Then there was the Kinloch, that was the medium-sized one. And then he bought an F-off trawler. Yeah. A big trawler that would go out, to where nobody else goes, that kind of thing, an 80-foot thing. For Queenies, the scallops, the little baby scallops, not the big ones, the small ones, because in the west coast of Scotland, and if you went further out into the Atlantic, that's what you caught. He knew nothing about it. Yeah. But he said, it's all right. I'll know various men that I can find that will be the skippers.
I'll learn if I go along.
And I think in those days they had these echo finders.
Oh, yeah. Like sonar, isn't it?
Yeah, that sort of kind of stuff. And so he thought he'd be fine. And to be fair, he worked really hard at it. And he'd be out there for days on end. But it was a hard living, and he went into it at the wrong time. Yeah. He also had a couple of skippers that liked to drink a little bit too much, and I think a lot of money was wasted. I think his knowledge of the big trawler fishing was not there. The lobsters, though, that was fabulous. God, I used to come home from school in the holidays, and I used to do the lobster fishing with him. And we'd go out in this little boat, and you'd be quite close to the cliffs, so it was interesting. Yeah. And then you'd spend the rest of the evening at home bandaging up with elastic bands, their claws. Then we packed them up, and they were all the time clacking away, making this terrible noise. And we packed them into these boxes with ice, and then we put them on the overnight train down to London to Bentley's Wine Bar. Right. And, that was pocket money, and he loved it. Yeah. And it was sort of something, I don't know, it was the recluse in him. He wanted to, get away from it all.
But he ended as president of the British Racing Drivers Club. I mean, there is a very exclusive club. I am not a member. I have friends who are members, but there's a club that, shall we say, ebbs and flows and has its ups and downs. How did Innis Ireland go on with it?
Well, I'm not quite sure the exact story. There were various stories going around about that. One thing I will say, which is lovely, and I think this is what I loved about my father, he never paid a subscription. Much to, I think, some of the boards discussed, and certainly John Surtees. Yeah. And Wizzo Williams, who obviously you've heard of. And did you ever meet Wizzo?
Oh, yes, I met him on quite a few occasions. I was a passenger of his on a few occasions. He was a passenger of mine on the odd occasion.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. Ah. It's safe to say I didn't frighten him anywhere near as much as he frightened me.
Well, Wizzo, I met him at Castle Combe many years ago, and we just got talking, and he was telling me about Dad's sort of rise to the president's sort of seat, so to speak, and the board meeting where it was announced. Because I think at the time there were some difficulties around the circuit and Walkinshaw, and things were going on, and also Bernie. Yeah. Now, several people on that.
Be careful! I can't stand.
I'm not saying anything. And I think at the time, several people said, "Look, we need somebody in who can deal with Bernie and sort the Walkinshaw stuff out." Yeah. and they said, Innes is your man. And at that stage, apparently John Surtees was seen banging on the table, but he's never paid a subscription. How can we have him as the president? And apparently my dad, every time it came to that time of the year where a subscription was due, somebody, probably Wizzo, would sort of perk up and say, I've just had a call from Innes. The boat sunk, he can't afford his subscription. The dog's died, the wife's left him, and everybody would sit there and think, typical Innes, here we go. And he never did pay a subscription, but I think what he did when he took on that role was, I think he paid it all back doubly. He sorted a lot out. I think a lot of people had a lot of respect for him at that time, because he dealt with things in a way that maybe only he could have done.
Yeah.
And he was there only for a short space of time, but just in that short space of time, I think people who maybe didn't know him very well grew to love him. Then you had a younger generation that grew to love him, because he was everything a president epitomizes, I think, and he worked really hard. And of course, at the time, unbeknown to me, he had cancer.
Yeah.
And he worked at that. He used to stay over there at the farmhouse a lot of the time during the week to get things done. And I think, he was the right man for the job at the time.
Now, there's also the book. I mean, the interesting thing on social media, the name of Innes Ireland and images of him and various other things.
God, he was good looking, though.
Yeah. There's the famous book, All Arms and Elbows.
Yes.
Is that still available?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, you can get it on eBay. It varies in price, and that's the bit that always amazes me. There are 2 other editions. The second edition has got the lovely 17 TVX on the front.
Yeah.
The Ogier car, the Essex team. And I'm a friend, and I do know James Ogier, and we have many a conversation about, God, I wish we hadn't sold that car for however much, £2,000 or something. But it is still available, and there are 3 different versions, and maybe that's something.
Which is the one you need to get?
It's all right, I'll sort something.
No, I mean for anybody listening.
Okay, sorry. Certainly the first edition.
Yeah.
Because and I will use the word, it's unbastardised.
Right.
The second edition has got a little bit added to it.
It's a bit filtered.
Yeah, and some different pictures.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people might argue with this, and it doesn't matter. This is my opinion. In my opinion, my father wrote that book from his heart.
Yeah.
The pictures were pictures. I've got some of the originals of that book, actually, I found out. But they were of that time. It's what he wanted.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel, if you are of a journalistic nature, would you want somebody after your death to go and then put other things in it, but keep the main of it the same? You either rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
But don't add bits here and there.
Yeah.
So the first edition obviously is the one to go for, but it does go for silly money. So actually the second edition's a nice one. I quite like that,
right,
to be fair. And it's got TVX, which I love. Although I must admit, the picture of him flying through the air, it epitomises, A, that era.
Yeah.
B, I think it's a great heading, All Arms and Elbows. It says, it says what it was like in those days. Yeah. But you still can. And then, of course, there was Motor Racing Today, which was his first book.
Yeah.
That's a nice little entry piece, I suppose. All Arms and Elbows has got the stories in it. It's got the meat. Some people believe it, some people don't, because they think, how on earth could he get away with it? Believe you me, that was what it was like, and that was definitely him. The antics with him and Steve McQueen, God, I'd have loved to have been there. Steve McQueen was one of my heroes, and that was one thing I will never forgive my father, was in making any introduction to Steve McQueen, and also in the later years, in the 80s, when they did Dad and Sterling, he hauled Sterling out of retirement to go and do the Playboy Championships in America in the 80s. And of course they were racing against Paul Newman, another one of my heroes. And not once did my old man say, oh, come on, Tom, let's go and come and meet Paul. I'm thinking, oh.
And to finish up, how much of your dad is in you? How much do you think you're like your dad?
Oh,
how much do you think your dad influenced you?
I would have said he didn't influence me at all, but I know, because I'm now in my 60s, I know I'm just like him.
Yeah.
I just didn't get to hold a racing. I mean, I did my own little bits of racing, and I took to bikes. It's there. And I do have, and actually my boss always says to me, God, you must be just like your father. You're so honourable, you're so loyal, and you want to give. And Dad was like that. And I think it's a rare thing. I'm not saying that I've got all of his qualities. I probably have got some of them. I've certainly had some of his ghastly tendencies. And I did the wild child stuff.
Yeah.
Completely out of control, but I did it without any reason, like he did sometimes. So yeah, chip off the old block, shall we say.
Christianne Ireland, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks so much for taking time out and allowing us to meet up here in a rather pleasant Cheshire evening. But once again, Christianne Ireland, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining me on the Backseat Driver Radio Show.
Mark, thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's just what I love doing. And meeting you and your good lady sitting here. Do you know, we could be anywhere, and time means nothing when you're sitting talking about stuff we all understand, and that's fantastic. And thank you for taking time to meet up with me. I'm just, little old me. And thank God that I had a father like I did. I feel very, very lucky. Yeah.
So if you want to find out more, Google Innes Ireland. That's INNES, and Ireland as in the country.
Absolutely.
And your laptop, your tablet, your mobile device will virtually clog up. Once again, Christianne, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Rarely beaten on price, never beaten on service. Whether it's cars, bikes or commercials, Hoddy Tyres are the best in the business. And when it comes to tyre expertise and advice to supplying the correct tyres for your vehicle's specific requirements, nobody comes close to David Lakin and the Hoddy Tyres team. So give them a call on 01200 613 192 or visit the website at hoddytyres.co.uk.